Public Relations. Edward L. Bernays. 1945. Narrated by Skeptical Waves. Part 2. Public Relations in Action. 18. Public Relations for a Profession: A Better Deal for Nurses. The preceding chapter examined some background material about nursing, analyzed the findings of surveys made to determine the attitudes of various sections of the public toward nurses and the nursing profession, and outlined certain public relations principles by which nursing could advance itself in its own and the public interest. This chapter 1 discusses the nurse's public relations problem in greater detail. In our highly complex society, no one special interest or group, whether teachers, preachers, doctors, lawyers, or nurses, dictates or governs its own destiny. Every section of our population depends upon other groups, and no individual group is sufficiently powerful or influential to achieve its desires independently and without the support of others. The decisions we as a nation make are the result of reconciling conflicting demands among groups. In broad matters of public attitude and action, the end results come from a continuous process of adjustment among these many groups. It is of the utmost importance that the nursing profession recognize this basic thesis. If nurses do not, they will be wasting much time and hard work in their efforts to improve their situation. They cannot merely cry out their needs in the marketplace and expect their demands to be answered automatically by the public. Thus, the first fact that nurses must recognize in their striving for fuller professional status, for public recognition, and for economic security, is that they are the victim or beneficiaries of broader social forces than the nursing profession itself. They must recognize that they are only one of many social groups that make up the people of the United States, that all of these groups are interdependent and interrelated, and that the final public accomplishment of any one group, whatever it may be, is the result of adjustment, of a meeting of minds, of reaching a common understanding and recognition of the problems of others, in short, of the groups determining where it has a mutuality of interest with other groups and acting accordingly. Look at the position of the nurse in the post-war period. Thousands of nurses volunteered for war service, just as doctors did, and dentists, technicians, and other healthcare professionals. When the war ended, most doctors and dentists were able to return to their practices and take up pretty much where they had left off. To a large degree, so were the hospital specialists and technicians. But the nurse found herself in a different and difficult position. She returned to a post-war America in which there was both a greatly increased demand for nursing service and a shortage of nurses, for which she was not responsible but for which she was partly blamed. She also found that she was expected to work on a pay scale totally inadequate to the greatly inflated costs of living. She thus became the victim of a sort of squeeze play between hospital and public, in which she was called upon to make sacrifices proportionally greater than any member of almost any other comparable group. It is recognized, for example, that teachers are justified in leaving their profession for higher pay elsewhere. But if the nurse does so, she is all too often accused of being unpatriotic or worse. Nursing groups have long recognized the injustice of their situation and have been casting about for a solution. In recent years, a concept of public relations as a cure-all has gained considerable credence, and many groups, including nurses, have felt that if only they could use public relations, their problems could be solved. But public relations is not a panacea, it is not a magic that will automatically cure a situation. Things do not happen quite as easily as that. Nurses as well as everyone else must realize that social change does not often move at an equal pace in all areas, it does not often proceed on a straight, or even, front. Advances in certain fields are made much faster than in others. Technology, for instance, has obviously moved ahead at a much faster rate than our knowledge of how to deal with human beings. The adjustment of people to each other in social contact, what we call human relationships, has lagged far behind the adjustment of man to the mechanical gadgets of our civilization. The nursing profession must therefore recognize the social dynamics, the basic, conditioning factors of the situation in which it finds itself. The only way the profession can deal with this situation is to enlist the aid of other social forces and society forces that are more potent, that have more status than nursing, and work with them toward the common overall goal of better nursing care for the American public with concomitantly better conditions for nurses. The nurse must do so, moreover, on a planned basis. She must react to her post-war situation more logically and impersonally and less emotionally than she has in the past. The nurses' professional groups must attack their problems with an engineering approach. That is, they must engineer the consent of the general public to their goals, so that public opinion will support their economic demands, proposed legal measures in behalf of nursing, and improvements in professional status and standards. The first step should be for the professional groups to define their goals for themselves, and then to define them for the public. Nurses know their goals in general terms, the time is now ripe for them to be codified, ordered, and the ways and means of their accomplishment decided upon. Then will come the task of selling the public on these goals. Public opinion is created only through education, and without it the nursing groups will achieve very little. For example, let us say that a specific reform can be accomplished only by legislation, by passing a law. But that law cannot be passed until public opinion has been educated to demand it, nor can it accomplish very much by itself without public opinion to support it once it is on the statute book. All this means, of course, that to solve their problems nurses must educate public opinion. But the first step must be to reach those well-defined groups within the public whose opinions in themselves carry weight, and who in turn influence the general public of which they are a part. Nurses must therefore enlist the support of such groups as doctors, lawyers, women's clubs, civic organizations, and the like, to an understanding of the truth that there is indeed a coincidence between their interests and the interests of the nurse. Only in this way, only by working together with others, can the end result be brought about: better nursing care for the American public and a better deal for nurses.